So you can see from the bulletin, we're going to move into our semi-annual meeting. Tom, do you want to say anything before we give people a little break?
Just an announcement. Melinda said there's a great need for help with fish, and so you might talk to her afterwards if you're looking for a volunteer opportunity. And just to officially begin our meeting, we're starting the meeting for our semi-annual meeting in the year 2024 with the Wash Park United Church of Christ community and congregation. We will check on that. I've been counting, and it looks like we're pretty close to having a forum. The thing that we need to vote on today is our minutes from our meeting, our annual meeting back in June of last year. So that would be the one thing we need to vote on. Well, okay, the budget as well. Just a small thing. Okay, and could we start off with just everybody had an opportunity to see the minutes? If you didn't, raise your hand and Bob can give you. Can our
And we do have 9 folks that I would identify as members online, so.
Peter?
So we agree that we have the quorum because of the members online and the members in the body of the church here. Okay, so good point, Annie. Thank you. Moving on then, can we vote to agree that the minutes will stand as written? They have been checked over by a number of people. Maggie? Okay, so we can correct Penny's last name. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of passing the minutes, just raise your hand. And we have, okay, thank you all. We've agreed that the minutes will be passed. And now we'll move into the rest of our meeting with our treasurer talking about our budget and also the end of the year of last year, how we came out. Thank you, Peter.
I have an interesting challenge today, being both the tech wizard and the treasurer. So, hold on just a second.
Can I push the button for you or advance a slide?
Here we go. I will let you know that. But theoretically, I can do it from here. So we start looking back at 2023 and some rather remarkable good news that we came to as we looked at the year's reports. A year ago, we had passed a budget with an expectation of a deficit of $18,692. We finished the year with a surplus of $4,738. I will not blame the treasurer and administrator for making a $23,400 mistake in their projections. Hopefully we can err in the same way this year.
Peter, can you explain why that happened? Was it an increase in donations or a decrease in costs or a mixture of both?
How nice of you to ask, Annie.
Yeah. I'm just asking you questions.
Yes, and if we need to, I can dig into detailed spreadsheets, but I think it's more helpful just to have the narrative. So our income was over budget by $21,000. The plate offering was way over budget by $21,000. Our pledge income came in a little bit $6,000 below budget, and our building rental income was $10,000 some over budget. So we had like $6,000 from the Center for Music and Arts rental income during the last year. And our expenses were slightly under budget. One of the reasons we were under budget is we had been paying Eric McEwen as our director of music, and he decided to move on to other things at the end of June. And so we had half a year without paying Eric's full salary. But some of what we were paying Eric as the Minister of Music got put into the line for guest musicians for Amy playing for us on Sunday morning. We were over budget on some building things. Gas, natural gas, fossil gas, as we'd better call it, was over. We had some extensive repairs and other things having to do with the boiler room, and we were a bit over on janitorial services because with all the building rental, there was a lot of stuff to clean up. And our building administrator, Amy, she plays multiple roles around here, was asked to put in extra hours and do extra work. It's also important that we look beyond the immediate budget. We have two restricted funds, the endowment fund that Scott talked about this morning, and the parsonage fund from the sale of the parsonage. Both of those increased in value through the year, even as we drew out $8,000 from the endowment fund for our non-budget sort of work. So our restricted funds increased through the year by about $35,000. We also had some other offerings that don't get reported in the budget. The congregation donated $845 for Maui relief, and that was matched by the endowment fund. And the staff bonus at the end of the year brought in $1,885. And as unpaid staff, I was a beneficiary of that as well. And I think I speak for the entire staff in saying, thank you.
You are welcome.
And there are other things that just don't show up on the church books at all. The sort of donations that people make week after week after week and month after month for Women's Homeless Initiative, for other appeals that come in to outside groups, donations to fish. That's generosity of this congregation, but it doesn't show up in our financial reports. And so, looking back at 2023, I say thank you to those of you who contributed significantly and consistently and creatively in so many ways. And thank you to all those in church leadership who helped keep an eye on that and keep our expenses well in check. Are there any questions about last year? Kathy says she wants us to also consider the non-financial amount of volunteer work that people put in, because certainly this church could not exist without that sort of profound commitment. As I look around the room, I see the number of people who put in massive amounts of time. WHI, Fish. Yep. Annie Whitwer says, huge shout out to Allison Sawtell, who helped out with music for much of the year. And there's a transition on that we will mention. Tom, were you saying?
Kathy covered it.
Okay, Kathy covered it. Are you ready to look ahead? The proposed budget. As I look at the budget for this year, I think of the supposed thing that in the 1500s European map makers looked at this new world that was unknown, and they drew maps with fuzzy edges and open spaces and notes about, "Here be dragons." Apparently, no map published in the 15 and 1600s said, "Here be dragons," or such things. One globe had that on it. But it became something that expressed how we feel about looking at uncertainty and strangeness. As I look at the year of great changes and unknowns ahead of us, the proposed budget has dragons around the edge. We have a lot of uncertainties coming up at us. And you can probably read this yourself, but to touch on it, we're moving. We're not entirely sure where or when, and we don't know what our costs will be on that yet. That makes it hard to budget. We don't know how much we will receive when the properties here on South William Street sell sometime in the course of this year. We don't know what it will cost for us to relocate to our new place and to spiff up the place we're going to. But we are, well, I'll get to that. And we don't know when we'll be moving, but we do know that significant rental income will end in August with the Early Learning Center that's moving to a new place. That will come up in the next steps report. Yeah, well, the rental income in the budget acknowledges that we will not have rental income after August.
And that is a definite thing.
That is a definite thing. So we do have some certainties, and I want to affirm these. We can say with confidence that we will continue to function as a congregation through 2024 and beyond that. We know that our community will continue to provide significant financial support for the work of this church. We will have staff, pastoral staff, administrative staff, worship support, and we intend to compensate them fairly. We have not always been doing that as well as we should have. We will continue to have programming for our membership and for our new community, both in person and online. We will have expenses related to our current location, perhaps even beyond when we make our move. We will have expenses for relocation. Most of that will be covered by the proceeds of the sale, so that doesn't come out of the operating funds. And we will have investment income after we sell these properties that will provide support for our expenses as a congregation, and that income will also be used for grants, donation, and other benevolences. Those are things that we know, maybe not with dollar signs and specific numbers, but those are core commitments that we can affirm. So, as we look at the budget, it is not comfortable and reassuring news. We are projecting that our internet connection is unstable. There be dragons here! All right. We are projecting that our income for the year will drop by something like $47,000. I'll get into details on that. Our expenses are projected to go up by a couple $1,000s. And so we are projecting a 2024 deficit of $44,560. Sit on that for a second and don't panic. We're expecting reduced income in the coming year. We looked at the 2023 report and we saw that incredible amount in the plate offering, the non-pledged income. $11,500 of that were donated by people who have made pledges for this year. So that will not be coming into the plate, it's in our counted pledge money. And we try and adjust that. And it's quite possible that the loose offering stuff will be lower other than that in this coming year. Our total pledges come in $9,100 below the 2023 levels, even with those folks moved in who had given non-pledge income. We had 2 significant donor families who did not pledge this year. So we are projecting our total donations to be $25,200 below where we were this year. That's a hit. We are also looking at a loss of rental income. Room rental for various things. I don't always know quite how Nancy allocates things into the budget, but room rental for AA groups and music lessons and whatnot will be down $5,000. CMA, Center for Music and the Arts, will be about $6,300 less. The Denver Chorale concert that has been held here in December is a huge moneymaker for us that makes it worthwhile to put up with the incredible disruption that they have caused for us every December. And the Early Learning Center that will be leaving here at the end of August means that we will have $8,600 less in rental income. Other than that, we'll have some expenses that go up and down. Gas prices continue to go up, and so we boosted that a little bit, and this, I don't know how far to budget these things. We may not be running our boiler after August, so who knows how much gas we'll be paying for. Janitorial costs will go down as the building is used less. Repairs will go way down because why fix things at this point? And in Denver, there are new fees for sidewalk maintenance going into effect this year. And if we are hit with those will be substantial because we have a lot of sidewalk. So that is a wild guess. It's probably low, but that would start in June and maybe end shortly thereafter, and maybe we can say, we're leaving in 2 months. We don't want to pay this at all. We'll see. Wage expenses are going up, and this is a good thing. Luehrs is getting a 9% raise, which is large because he refused to take one last year in light of that budget deficit. You don't get to turn that down this year, Lee. Our building administrator, Amy, will be putting in more hours at a higher pay scale. And Amy is also, because she doesn't have enough jobs around here, taking over as the choir director as a 5 hours a month role, and has already stepped into that, and thank you, Amy. Those are good things for increases in the budget. Administrative expenses go up a bit. We've raised Nancy Magliari's stipend on that. For some reason, the tech wizard, Alice, who is here 2 Sundays a month, is listed under administrative instead of worship support, because that's the way the budget happened. That's going up a little bit. Spiritual formation, I put more money in the budget because that's what we're about. This is a values statement. Go spend it. The community and fellowship groups get more money because we're going to need a lot of church gatherings this year. And the beloved community that handles donations beyond us goes up a bit because I thought it was time for us to raise our denominational support, our church's wider mission. That has not been raised in many years, and I'm on the conference board of directors, and so I proposed that. And the board said, okay. So, we have a proposed deficit of $44,560, and that makes me pause and swallow, but that really doesn't tell the whole story. Some of the building expenses might not happen. As I was, again, looking through the spreadsheet, I was realizing we pay something like $45,000 a year for building insurance. That will drop or go away as of the middle of the year. And starting with the sale of the properties, as you will hear later in the meeting, we will make decisions about how much of that income gets put into investment funds that will subsidize the work of this church. That money from investments is not included in this budget because we don't know how much will come in and how we're going to divide that. But there will be money coming in that I haven't named. So it's a big number. It will be counterbalanced in some ways. There will be dragons around the edges of this budget. But we will not sail off the edge of the earth. I promise you that. And the budget is one tool in our sense of discerning our mission and ministry that we use to figure out who we are and what we're doing. And so in the context of all the stuff that's going on, this is what we are proposing. Are there questions or comments about this somewhat frightening set of numbers? Annie? Come on up.
I do need to name that I'm crying a lot today, but it's not related to church. We had news last night that we lost one of our dearest friends, and so I'm just not able to stop the tears. My budget-related question is, if we're not moving out in the middle of the year, because everything does take longer than you expect in deciding where to go and in remodeling new space, how would that affect this budget? Because I think it's more likely that we're going to be here for the rest of 2024. So I wonder how that changes our thinking. That's my budget-related question. I think we will not be done here in June, given the little that we know so far and the pace of construction, wherever it is.
And Annie, you and your family and friends are in our prayers. Church is a community that holds us in many ways. About the only thing that we really know on the timeline is that the Early Learning Center will move at the end of August. We might be here after that. I'm watching a crack at that corner of the sanctuary that's getting wider as the choir loft separates from the south wall and an old window is becoming more evident. We may not want to stay around here too much longer, or the building expenses will go sky high. If we stay here, we will have some building expenses. We have to keep paying the insurance. Staff is a major part of our budget, and that's going to be the same wherever we are. If we've sold the property but we haven't moved yet, we can start to draw on those funds. There's a lot of flexibility. And I think our board is prudent and thoughtful and will guide us through the process appropriately. Kathy?
I think I'll add to that. I know it has made me nervous thinking that this property may sell before we're ready to move. I'm feeling more comfortable with that possibility for a couple reasons. One, it is likely that our real estate agency can help us continue to rent in this space. I also think, there are places we can visit. We have spent time at the Kirk, we have spent time at 6th Avenue. We are a small group of people. You can all come to my house on a Sunday if you want.
Especially in the summer.
Yes, so I feel a little bit better about that. That's something that has made me nervous. My other comment about the budget is having a family, clearly, that has been part of the United Church of Christ for generations. It means a lot to me, not only to pay our minister and staff what they should be paid, but also to contribute appropriately to our church's wider mission.
I just don't think we can decide to close on the church building until we have the next one. So I appreciate Kathy's sentiment that we have places to go, but we also don't need to have a closed sale before we know where we're going and we have a to move to. So that's something we have control over. I think we need to be really clear with the real estate committee that we are not selling this building until we know we have a home.
So for the online people, Annie is raising concern about selling the building before we know where we're going and have some certainty around that. I assume Maggie will be talking about some of that. She's nodding. We debated whether or not we should do the budget after the next steps report, and some said, well, this explains why we have to do the next steps, and so you pick and choose about which one goes first. So a reminder that it was last August that the congregation voted very substantially that yes, it is prudent and responsible for us to sell this property and find something that fits us better. We are now in that awkward time of figuring out how to do that. So that's the next part of the conversation.
I want to remind everyone.
Scott?
I want to remind everyone, as part of Peter's presentation, we've got $65,000 in our savings account. And we've known all along that that's not touching our endowment fund. So we have resources to be able to deal with surprises or with challenges. This is a scary time because we don't have all the answers, but we are marching forward appropriately as a faith community to an exciting time. And as a result, I have confidence, I think leadership has confidence that we will have the financial resources, the human capital, and the the energy to be able to make the right choices together. And we will have far too many congregational meetings. We will have many more decisions. We will have new budgets that need to be approved per our bylaws. And so I'm glad we have more money for snacks.
Amy will bring a microphone around if you have things to say.
Scott, your reminder about our savings account makes me much comforted.
Not the endowment. The endowment is supposed to be the endowment. It's
Right.
supposed to be our backup fund.
Well, no,
But
Scott
the
was saying,
65,000 is not the endowment.
But then he also named the endowment fund.
yes,
Again, not touchable.
Yeah, he said it wasn't. And the
and I
thing I want
forgot
to
to put
say,
in the just plain savings account in those non-budget listings. There is another 65,000 there.
the thing I'm hearing in this discussion is the inevitable tension between a budget, which is a very concrete, and most of us were raised to live by our budget, to try our very best to stick to it, even to build emergencies into our budget so that we don't have to get gobsmacked. But a move like the one we're talking about and like the time we're in is full of uncertainty. And I remember when I first started at ILIF more than 20 years ago, I read a lot of books on where the church is heading and what is happening with the church. And a lot of what I read about is happening. And the thing that I think is so remarkable about this congregation is we are reminded by the early church to step in and love even when we're insecure and uncertain. And we are being called the same, I think. And so we may have to live with a certain amount of tension between the concrete and the insecure, and have faith in ourselves that we can do it and we can make it happen in a way that lives out our faith.
Let me invite anyone online, as we often do. If you have a comment or question at this point, unmute and hop in, and we want to hear from you. Bev.
In spite of the fact that the budget looks really difficult this year, I did want to say that I really appreciate the fact that we're putting more money into the OC, the
OCWM.
OCWM.
Our church wants money.
Because part of that fund is the Neighbors in Need Fund, and we did receive a grant from them for Women's Homelessness Initiative work that UCC's churches are doing. So it's good for us to support that because they are supporting our programs too.
Catherine, I see you unmuted.
Yes, this isn't exactly a budget question, but I've been wondering what's going to happen to our solar panels if we sell the place and they just want to demolish everything?
We have not made any final decisions on that. I can guarantee to you that they are not going to get junked. There are other churches in the community who might be interested in a reduced price on some lightly used solar panels. There might be ways that we can move them to some part of wherever we're going. There's a number of options, and they will continue to generate solar power for many, many years to come. Thank you, Catherine.
I just want to say a couple things. We have a lot of information to share with all of you, and some of the questions are related to that. And that more than 25 members of our congregation have been working over the past year, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of evaluation. And so there's information we want to share with you. And I think the budget is going to, most budgets are good to start off with, but they change. And I think we we need to trust that this budget will probably be different throughout the year.
I can
but
guarantee that.
Yes. So, two things. I would like us to kind of move along unless there's some burning issue about the budget. And then we will share a lot of information after the budget is approved. But there is a lot of food in back. If you're starting to feel a need for that, just walk out anytime you want.
But not yet.
And you can use the bathroom too anytime you want, okay?
Since we need a motion and a formal vote to approve the budget, I'm wondering if there's any way we could formulate a motion that approves this budget for a 6-month period instead of a 12-month period, because I don't have a lack of faith or trust, but I do believe that it's worth visiting something which is so uncertain. So I don't know if that's even possible in our system, but if, like, I would move to approve the budget to be reviewed, to be voted on again at the annual meeting in June based on updates about our sale and our move and our income and expenses in the first 6 months of the year. So that, okay, I'm now making that motion unless someone tells me I cannot.
And Melinda seconds it. And Maggie has her hand up.
Your motion bases information on the first 6 months of the year. Do you want to change that to 5 months so we can meet in early June instead of July?
I guess I meant it to be voted on, but should I say approve the budget until the date of the
Yeah,
annual meeting?
that would be good.
Usually in
Late May or early June, yeah. Okay, okay.
So,
All right, well, I just wanted to make sure. Okay,
to reflect that it will be re-voted on, not just reviewed, but re-voted on at the annual meeting.
okay.
so for those online and for our recording of this, Annie, could you grab the microphone and just... It's being recorded and Bob is taking minutes. Annie, if you could once again state your motion.
That was a garbled thing. So for the recording, I move that we approve the budget as proposed, as long as we have an opportunity to re-vote and reapprove this budget at our annual meeting in June of 2024.
A probably modified budget.
We will review and re-vote on the budget, which is not generally the annual meeting's purpose.
Correct. Melinda says, okay. And at this point, I will turn it over to Tom. Have fun.
For voting, so would everyone raise their hand if they agree with the motion that Annie proposed? Does anybody need to say anything else about that or a question? Okay.
This is
Are you
Amy
raising your hand to
online. I
vote, or-
also agree.
Someone online want to say something?
I just wanted to say I agree.
Oh, okay.
It's Amy.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Agree.
Those opposed? Okay, it passes. So we've passed our budget for the next 5 months. Okay, good work. If we want to take a little break, just a few minutes, get something to eat or just talk to other people or go to the bathroom, feel free.
And for those of you online, Hang in there. We will come back with the next steps report in a few minutes. If you want to go get a snack or a bathroom break, this would be a good time to do it for you too.
We will continue to build community for Wash Park UCC, even as we reach out to other groups, and we will seek communities, locations, and partners who share these values and will join with us in this work. So this fall, in October, a number of you were able to join us at La Forêt for our one-day retreat on a Saturday, and there we spent time in starting 4 working groups to move this process of change forward. These were the groups, and we asked everybody who was at La Forêt that day to choose a group to join, and then continued to encourage those who couldn't make it to La Forêt to join one of these groups. And if you were there, I want to remind you of the activity that we started that day with. Maggie brought a plant from her house, and she had put things all over and around the plant, and we were sitting in a great big circle around it. And from our seat, we were asked to name what we could see on the plant. We could see some decorations that she'd hung on the plant, a scarf wrapping around the plant at its roots. And then she pointed out, that we couldn't see everything from that one single perspective, that we needed to see it from multiple perspectives. So then we got up and we went around and we looked at it more closely and saw it from different perspectives. And then again, we named what we'd seen that we hadn't seen before. And it was such a great metaphor for where we sit right now and the changes we are anticipating and going through. So I'd like you to kind of keep that in mind. I'd also love for, I want to start with gratitude. Gratitude for the working group leads, people who have spent hours and hours and hours since October doing research, interviewing realtors, looking at budget, planning events, and the people who are part of those committees. If you are on one of these working groups, would you stand right now? Yes, you are, Laura. So many of us here, wave if you're online and you're in a working group. If you are not yet in a working group, they are open meetings. Talk to a working group lead. The more people that give their perspective, the better this transition will be. It won't be easier. It may be harder. But it's important as a congregational church for us to hear from each other. So thank you to those of you who are serving. Thank you to those of you who have perhaps maybe not been on a committee, but you've expressed your thoughts by email or in one-on-one conversations with folks or at your extended family or in a telephone call. It's important for us to hear everyone. So what we are going to do is to have an opportunity, as I said, for both reports and then small group and large group conversation. So we're going to hear from all 4 of these teams, and I'm going to ask Kathy Carfrey, who is part of Caring Communities, to come give that report first, please.
Good to be here. Just to be clear, the Caring for Communities, it's about sort of connecting us with each other. We're a closed group. We don't want any, no, I'm just kidding. We'd welcome anybody to join us who'd like to join our group as we talk about how we are connected to each other. And we are finding that our meetings are actually very connecting, as I'm sure all of these groups are. So, as you see, we are about strengthening the bonds we have to each other while we head into change, because we know as we head into change, we need to be strong and care, really work on how we are connected to each other. We've been working on a sanctuary timeline. Thank you, Scott, today. Everybody in the room will be asked at some point to put something up there that's significant for them. So please watch for that, or let me know if you'd like to be involved. We started some suppers on Sundays. We started that last Sunday. Thank you, Allison and Peter, for hosting. Anticipate that you will be invited to a supper, and if you think you might like to hold a supper, let me know that as well. We are looking to the future to create some rituals as we, just about our history and our future. And we will be looking at ways to connect with our new neighbors wherever that is. So that's it. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Excuse me. So I'm chair of the Finances Committee, and I just want to do some groundwork before we put up a graphic of that we think is important to be able to share today. The Finances Working Group is going to recommend to leadership where we invest the proceeds of the sale of our properties. It's going to be a lot of money, and we need to we are going to be interviewing 3 investment firms to select the most appropriate one for our purpose. All 3 of these firms provide socially responsible investments with a balance between security and performance. So that's one thing. The second thing, the finances team is going to propose a policy, a financial policies document to clearly detail how Wash Park UCC manage and protects its funds. We have some guidelines now with our endowment charter, but it's very important to have clearly defined policies and procedures that are approved by the congregation. So the finances team will create a draft, take it to leadership, and then the policies document will be approved by the congregation, so that we're all involved in the review of how we manage our money. These policies will also include the approval, the recommendation, selection, and approval process for social justice donations we anticipate making for the future. That's not something that a small group, we believe, should be doing in general. These policies will also ensure that the financial assets of Wash Park cannot be removed from the United Church of Christ domain. There's talk about steeplejacking. People hearing that we've got a lot of money and they want to become members, and then all of a sudden they decide, well, we really don't like the United Church of Christ. Let's form something separate. And so we want to ensure that the Washington Park United Church of Christ, this faith community, can continue, and these policies will prevent that type of steeplejacking. And as Peter indicated, the 2024 budget cannot project what is needed for our new location. And there will come a time when we, again, it may be at our annual meeting, it may be after. we have more information. When we're looking at what else needs to be included in that budget, and then input from the congregation. Is there additional staff that we feel that we need in a new location? Are there other budget line, expense lines that are appropriate given this new focus that we have that is mission-centric as opposed to building-centric? So those are the general thoughts on the Finances Committee. Now, the initial thoughts on how sale proceeds are divided between social justice and congregational support is in this graphic. You can see that we will receive the proceeds of a sale. A guesstimate is between $4 and $4.5 million for these 398, 400, and 420 South William Street. We will use some of that money for relocation to a new spot. But then there's going to be a major discussion and congregational vote on how do we split the sale proceeds between an amount used for mission beyond the congregation, and it's really untouchable for internal use. And the other side is create an investment fund or funds to subsidize current expenses and mission with the intent for long-term sustainability. When we look at the green side, we divide between immediate and future distributions. So the thought process, and again, this is a proposal, and we will decide as a congregation that in perhaps the first year after the sale, there will be a certain amount of money that is pushed out into social justice work to be able to leverage and repurpose part of the assets. And then another portion is future grants after that first year. On the orange side, we have to determine the amount or range of funding to be provided each year for general expenses and for mission and future allocation. Annual funds for building or staff, perhaps to cover, until we know how we survive as a faith community. If we do not grow in numbers, we'll have some interesting discussions and conversations about how can we survive in any location, but we don't necessarily want to say we're just going to use this money to continue to worship and gather indefinitely. We don't believe. We'll also have discretionary funds for mission giving, future use, and special projects, social justice work that is in our budget. So this is a framework for what we might do. Again, it is a proposal, and we as a congregation will ultimately be making these big decisions.
For those online, we are having internet problems. We've dropped Zoom twice now. Stick with us. We will try and get to you. Lee, let me get you up. Go ahead, Lee.
I can hear you, but I didn't, if I'm being asked a question, I haven't heard the question. Yeah, we're not getting any. Scott's sound went away.
Well, as I was saying, but I was muted so you couldn't hear it. We're having internet problems. We've dropped Zoom twice. And when that happens, we will disappear for you. We'll try and bring you back as well as we can.
Okay. Thanks to everybody.
So I guess let's move on to real estate.
I am not that.
Okay, I guess I'm next. And I am speaking for the logistics group, which is led by Dorothy Norby, who has to work. So sorry about that, but she's been doing a wonderful job along with the committee of getting everything organized. That's the biggest thing when you're doing a move. You know, what do you take? What don't you take? What do you do with the things that you're not taking? So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. In September and November, we have done inventories of every room in the building. Everything is on these large spreadsheets so that we know where it is. We also moved some of the items to a better location so that we can track them later. If there were things that were broken or just really unusable anymore by us, they've been moved downstairs, outside, or inside Peter's old office. Eventually, they will be disposed of or taken over to Goodwill or one of those other places where they can be used. Take a look down there, see if there's anything that that maybe you can use in your other activities. Until a new space is agreed upon, we're kind of at a stopping point. There's a lot of decisions out there that still need to be made on that. One thing with the new building, whatever the new building is, we're starting to look at things that we know that we're going to need, like chairs. We've been looking at chairs that First Plymouth has. If you were down there, it's very comfortable, very supportive, and individual chairs. We know that eventually we will have to order them and there may be a longer lead time. So we're doing that research first. Of course, nothing will happen until we know what's, where we're going and exactly what space we have to work with. The other thing that we're looking at is, as we decide an location or maybe before, have an architect work with us to see what we need in that space, what will fit in, how can we organize the space, using a lot of partitions. If you've been involved with WHI overnights and up at First Unitarian Church, they have beautiful partitions that fold into a closet. You don't know that they're there until you need them. You pull them out and you can make a very nice additional classroom space or place for meetings. So we're kind of looking at that kind of things as research that goes on. One thing that we would like is that start thinking about what you want in your new spaces. And eventually we're going to have probably big pieces of paper on the walls here for you to come up, not today, but sometime in the future, and put on what you would like to see in the new space so that we know how to start planning that. I do have some items up there of things that are to be disposed of or potentially be disposed of. If you have any desire to work with this committee on any of these projects, I mean, maybe somebody would like to work on getting rid of the organ. Where do we, if that's could be a one project thing. You can be part of the committee, but just focus on the organ. Or someone who knows a lot about solar panels, where do they go? We could use some more help. Logistics it's a lot of work. So. I believe that a lot of people have said that the pews have a lot of issues with them and that there's a lot of repair that's been going on, and that we may want to take some of the proceeds from a sale and get new chairs that are supportive, kind with the handles so that people can get themselves up lower. So we're going with the assumption that we don't take the pews. Oh, yes. There will be, we will have 2 sessions of a group. Beth and I will be working on that. So I don't remember if you have questions. Thanks.
I'm still not Beth. I'm Maggie. The real estate legal work group has been very busy. And let's see, where am I here? We have selected a realtor team of Russell Gelman and Chuck Moore. And I don't think I have this up here. Okay, that's my second one. Anyway, so we've learned a lot of things from talking to all the realtors. We did a request for proposal process and reviewed written proposals. And then we had interviews with 6 of the teams that proposed. We had 8 proposals, and we had second interviews with 3 of the teams. And we learned an awful lot about redevelopment and development and about real estate in the Wash Park area. Some of the things we learned is that reuse of the church building is a possibility, but it's not likely. Because of the current zoning in this area, we're likely to see the properties redeveloped into housing consistent with what's in the neighborhood right now. And we're expecting, as Scott mentioned, the proceeds to be between $4 and $4.5 million. Let's see. So we, and I think all the interviews reinforce this, that we didn't feel we had the expertise in the church to handle the properties ourselves. So that's why we sought a real estate firm. And Gelman Moore has a lot of experience with development and with development, particularly with adaptive reuse. And adaptive reuse means that someone would take the church and turn it into a condo, or someone would take the church and turn it into their personal home, or someone would take the church and make it into a different use. And so if we end up in the adaptive reuse scenario, then there's a lot of experience, particularly Chuck Moore has that. So we've got a contract with them. And then we're going to go into pre-sale preparation. And the important thing to remember is, particularly this was highlighted in the proposal we received from Gelman Moore, is that they're going to do what we want. We're in charge of the process. We're not turning the whole process over to them. We're going to start weekly meetings with them. And there's probably going to be quite a bit of pre-sale preparation once we get to the point where we're listing the properties, and we may not list them all at the same time. They're going to be listed for 2 to 3 weeks with a deadline for offers, and Gelman Moore will help us evaluate the offers. And after we choose an offer, there'll probably be a due diligence period for the buyers to do things like soil testing, confirm surveys. If they're interested in using the building, they're going to look into the crack that Peter pointed out. things like that. And so then after we get through the due diligence period, we would close. And so we will not close without a lease back of the properties until 8/31 at a minimum. Obviously, if we have a situation where we have chosen a new space, but we don't think we can get in there till October, we would change that. We're also in charge of when we list the properties and what pre-work we do in terms of research ourselves prior to the due diligence, prior to listing. I wasn't anticipating that.
I think I would like to have a higher discussion. Fill it out.
I understand that you weren't expecting to have a congregational vote on putting the property on the date of putting the property on the market. But I feel like we need group deliberation beyond the committee about that choice. Or else, again, this is not the official meeting time. This is report time. So I don't think we can put the property on the market until we know where we're moving and we have very specific dates around the move-in time. So it could be August, but it might not be till December of 2024. So
yeah, and I have a little timeline to show people kind of more towards the end of the presentation, but there's a lot of balls in the air.
right, but I'm not willing to just do a lease back unless we have a really clear space we're moving to. So
Okay.
that's me.
Here, I support that online. That's been a big concern of mine as well.
And we are going to be having small groups, so we can discuss that there or in a larger discussion at the end, because I know people don't want to be here all afternoon. Is there anything else?
I was just going to say, we voted as a congregation, 92% of us to sell. Listing the property and beginning a sales process was approved on August 20th. And leadership, you have selected leadership, and leadership is moving ahead.
I have no objection to selling the property. I believe we should move forward with selling it. I do not believe we gave anybody just a blank check to move forward at any time when we don't have a home to move to. I am not against the sale of the church. I want to make sure we have a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree that we should not sell the property until we have an absolute place to go to. And I'm also on board with selling everything. We cut our feet off on our choices on where we go if we don't have a base. We need to move by a certain time. We feel we need to move by a certain time or whatever. So this is, I think we compromise our choices in getting the best and most wonderful place for our congregation to live into the future if we sell this building before we know where we're going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think Tom's going to talk next, and then I'll come back with a potential schedule.
How many lots do we have?
We have 4 lots. We have 398.
Which is how many lots?
It's a 75-foot lot.
So it's 3 lots?
No, it's 1 lot that's 75 feet.
No, 1 lot is 25 foot. 1 lot is 25
Right, but
feet.
with current zoning, you can't really do anything with a lot that's less than 50. So the realtors that we talk to consider that 1 lot. We could,
in reality, though,
excuse me, we could split it and sell a sliver to the neighbor to the north. That's one idea we're going to explore. We also could probably put 2 houses there, one facing Williams and one facing Dakota. And we will be those are some of the first things we'll be looking into with our realtors.
Well, that's
But I
quite variable
also-
because they are building on a 25-foot lot exactly behind the parking lot. That's a 25.
I'd be happy to answer these questions. We learned a lot from the realtors, but I think it's more appropriate in the small groups.
It may be. However, we need to know, we have 75 feet over there. How many feet do we have here frontage?
About
Williams.
150, the church and the education building are on 2 lots. And then the playground is on 1 lot. And that lot, I think, ends at the edge of the building, but we have not had a survey.
So that's 75 feet, and this is how many feet on Williams?
150.
150. So that is
But
325.
roughly, I
lots.
can, if you want to come to the group, I can show you the information from the realtors. All right, come to my group. I think we're going to move on to Tom talking about Mosaic. Oh, Allison, did you have something? Oh, okay.
Just a point of information, the 4 to 4.5 million that will realize from the sale, is that after we pay the realty firm, realtors or whoever we're working with, or before? Do we know that?
Either way you want, it's a very rough number.
Okay, that's fine. I was just curious, kind of playing with numbers in my mind.
The realtors are going to get between, I don't know, I have the percentages in my, I don't have them in my head. So I can, if you really want to know what the percentage the realtors are getting, I can just email me and I can tell you. It's not on the agenda. Would you? Okay, the decision hasn't been made one way or another, and we're about to talk about one potential place to go. Tom?
So I would encourage you to remember there have been teams who have been working this. And so in terms of the real estate, you might have good ideas, but we were working with professionals. One of the members of the working group is a realtor. So I would really encourage you to talk in the small groups after this and raise your questions there. But the reason why we broke into the groups and had these different teams of people working on this is so we could come up with something to offer the community. You might not agree, and that's fine. But 1 or 2 people not agreeing does not mean that we're going to go in a different direction than what the committee proposed with all of its work and all of its questioning and information and really digging into this. So I know people, Guy, you think it's worth a lot more. We hope it is too. But it's what the market will bear is what we're going to come up with. And so anyway, moving on to the timeline. Yes, the Mosaic. So a couple things. I know some people have been upset because they felt like Mosaic was a done deal the way we were talking about it. Well, it's not a done deal, but it is a really good opportunity for us. And the reason why is because it is nice space. Now, maybe everybody doesn't like the space, but many people do. It's in central part of Denver, which was one of the things that people asked that we not go out far away from the city. The other important thing I think that people liked was that it's a UCC community archway that we would be working with, and that we would have space in the midst of people who are just recently, as they move into these 4 buildings, unhoused. So it would allow us to be in the midst of people who we are committed to. The other big thing I'd like to say is some of the places we looked at and some of the places maybe you have talked about, they'll let us use this particular space that they point out, but they don't have other space for us. And the good thing about Mosaic is they have other spaces, not only the worship space, but there are other rooms and spaces that we would be able to use. So I think personally, I'll just say that Mosaic's a great space, and that somebody is willing to work with us on that space. You know, they have Archway from the beginning has said, we'd love to have you in there as either renters or people who would lease the space. And so that kind of covers what we're talking about there. We've talked over and over again with Archway to get the questions that we want answered, like accessibility, which has become something that we've really paid a lot of attention to and have some ideas of how it could become more accessible. The other thing is parking. And again, that's something that we've been working on for months and saying, how close can we park? And somebody told me this morning they were there the other day and they said, wow, the parking isn't as far away as I thought it was, because I knew where I was going the second time here. One of the issues with doing housing like this, and so we would be in what's called affordable housing. We would be on the first floor. Affordable housing usually it's a package for financing of, say, 4 or 5 different lenders, investors. And so, you know, when we do our houses, we go to the bank. When affordable housing is created, it's you go to the city, you go to Chase Bank, you go to the state, you go to Denver Housing Authority for vouchers. You have a lot of people that not only are they helping, but they expect something of the people who own the property. So, and I guess what keeps coming back to me is, I know people are saying there's lots of places around Denver. And I would just say, we've had at least 3 people, part of our committee, looking at places around the city. And I mean, if you're aware of Denver, Denver doesn't have a lot of space. And if you get space in Denver, some of you know this, it's very expensive per square foot to rent. So we're looking at the possibility of somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 rent per month for that space, which is about, Peter, do you remember the square footage on it? You can look that up, but okay. So yes. Okay. So it's probably about 3,500 square feet, which if we pay $4,000 for that per month would be a pretty good deal for us. So just again, I want to stress that we've heard the questions. I mean, we've heard it from a lot of you, all of these questions, and that's why we've been working at it to try to figure out how to get the answers to you. And I'm just saying, we can keep looking for a long time. I think Mosaic is a great spot for these many reasons I mentioned. And we, according to our conversations with Archway, they will be leasing up in the spring, which means we could get in there as early as May, for instance. Not that we're going to, but that's the possibility if we go with Mosaic.
Tom, I knew back when we voted that this was your first choice, and the report shows to me that it's still your first choice and that 30 people have now visited the property. There was no other new information on there. We still don't know the cost. We still don't know the real timeline. We still don't have questions answered about how to configure the space. There is no space for church school. There is no kitchen. So we know it's your favorite. And we know that a few other properties have been explored, but I guess I'm wondering, we don't really know what we're doing now. Like, this is an update that we still don't know very much about Mosaic.
So I did give you information just now. It might not be as complete as you'd like everybody would like to know exactly how much we're going to pay for rent. But I'm saying we have.
This is what we knew in August, except that it's the same information that we had in August.
Not sure about that, but.
Since August, we've had a meeting with staff from Archway, Sarah and Sebastian, most notably. We submitted a list of questions. They have gone to their primary funder and requested the ability to control the space so they can lease it to us. They have received questions back from their funder. They're answering them now, and they've committed to a meeting the week of February 12th to start talking to us about the lease. I think other people have looked at other spaces. I think our initial foray into commercial space indicated that would be much more expensive. And to me, it's much less stable. I mean, you see restaurants and other businesses going out of business all the time because they say, the landlord raised our rent. So to me, it seems like a much less stable market. If you divide $5,000 by 3,500 square feet, that's $1.42 a square feet. I signed leases for the state for 30 years of my career, and it's unheard of.
Like some of us love it. So I still hear that everybody on the administrative team thinks this is a great choice. I know that we've looked at 2 other church possibilities, and I know that one member has looked extensively at commercial properties. But that doesn't really answer my question, because the question is, if the administrative team thinks that we should go here, but the rest of us don't, then what's going to happen? Or if a good number of us don't think we should move to this space, what are we going to do next? So I hear that you like it. I hear that it's cheap, but I don't really hear the answer to the other questions. Do we have a date to vote? Are we going to see what they tell us in February and then come back to the congregation for a vote? I just don't really know the process, because what everybody really hoped for in August was that we vote to sell the church and that we agree to move to Mosaic all in one move. We didn't agree to that. We haven't had that really difficult congregational vote about where. I know you all like it.
Okay.
Can I ask a question online?
Yes. Yes, please.
For those who haven't yet had a chance to visit, will there possibly be future opportunities to do that? What would be the process for that?
I think you probably just need to email at this point the real estate team, and we'll reach out to Mosaic. because Lee's recovering and also because we wanted to remove Lee from direct contact with Mosaic due to a potential conflict of interest. You know, we had arranged all the previous trips through Lee, but so we'll have to take over arranging those. But I think most of them have been on Sundays. So if people need a different day than Sunday, email me and
Okay, so
we
just
can-
email you, Maggie.
yeah. You know, so I think anybody who would like a tour, if you can email me like in the next week and let me know when you want it. You know, what days work for you. We'll try and work around that. I think Sundays have been more ideal for people because there's less construction going on.
Okay, thank you.
But to answer Annie's question, I don't think the leadership team wanted to ask the congregation to vote on moving to Mosaic when there were so many unknowns. So. Yes. Yes, when we know more about how much it's going to cost, you know, have the accessibility issues pinned down, where the parking is. You know, a church, I mean, we would construct a kitchen somewhere. That's what the architect would help us with. Well, if we're leasing the space, we get to do whatever we want. The historic designation, from my understanding from all the realtor discussions, has to do with the outside of the building. You can really do whatever you want on the inside, almost. Okay, well, I can add that to my list of questions for Archway.
I appreciate the work you've done, even when I disagree with that direction. So I hope that you know that.
You know, not that I have scads of extra time, but if there's not a viable alternative, I'm happy to have discussions with, you know, the landlord for any other space. You know, I view that as part of the committee's charge.
So okay, John, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just
online?
want to recap to make sure I understand correctly. What you're saying is that Archway currently doesn't have permission from their sources and funding backers to even enter into a lease arrangement with us, nor until that happens would they be able to tell us what modifications we would and would not be allowed to make. And hence, that's why you're unfortunately unable to move any farther forward than we currently are at. Is that a correct restatement?
I might say it a little differently. They have been in conversations with the tax credit entity, bank, Chase, and Chase. So Chase knows what they want to do, and it's just a matter of, at least what I'm interpreting, it's a matter of getting the final sign off on that. So the space is there. It isn't to be used for any other purposes in the building. And they just need to give final approval for that.
So have they communicated to us what those covenants and restrictions that they've asked for are?
No.
Okay. So we don't know.
Correct. We don't have as much information as Archway has. Okay, we do have small groups being available now where you can, okay, yes, Scott is going to do the timeline and the early learning. Okay.
Fine.
It's all
My timeline. This is a sample timeline because I don't have a crystal ball and we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So this is my Google aided timeline. So in January, we've got a contract with the realtor and we're going to work on preparing the properties. We're going to begin lease negotiations on February 12th, the week of February 12th. Sometime in the March to May timeline, we're going to finalize the lease and put the church properties on the market. And later on, we'll get offers. We'll sign the lease. And then around July, we'll close the properties and move into the new space. Ideally. And as my realtor used to tell me, I don't do windows and I don't have a crystal ball. So this is just a guesstimate of how things might go. And as Annie mentioned, it might get stretched out.
Having done construction recently, I can tell you that getting a construction permit from Denver will take longer than you have in your timeline.
I'm sorry?
Getting a construction permit to make the changes is going to be longer than you've got in the timeline.
Yeah,
starting
and
at
I'm somewhat handicapped, but having just signed the contract, I have not sat down with the realtor team and my other committee members. So this is just guessing. Aside from adding a kitchen, the space needs to have the floor redone. Yeah, but I think, Annie, the church school space was not something that was listed in the August requirements, but I think it's something we can figure out. There's enough spaces in there with multi-purpose room. Well, there's a few spaces you could use for different purposes. And I think an architect will help us hone down what our needs are. And that's why Bev mentioned getting input from people. A church school wasn't on the initial list of what the team that looked into that in July and August were. So if that's something that's really important to people, it's great information to have so that we can do some planning for that. But, if you put the picture of the space back up, Peter, the mosaic, I think Peter took this and there was a bunch of junk in the middle and he erased it and made pretty floors. But whoops. But this is just kind of a visualization, but I think we could go in there to redo the floors, buy the chairs and go in there and have construction happening Monday through Friday and church on Sunday. So, some of it is, there's a lot of balls in the air. There's a lot of things that are going to happen simultaneously. And, I think we just need to be patient, talk with each other and make sure that we get as many needs met as possible.
Can we have church permission to explore other options in a more formal way?
Sure, if you want to lead that.
Finding a real estate agent who might investigate other possibilities or investigate other churches that might lease space to us. So that's not, we either are moving only towards mosaic or we have other, and some people, so I hear a yes, that's what you want to do and not, or we have to be exploring other options, but we don't have a way of exploring those right now.
Well, I can certainly speak with Gelman more when I meet with them on Wednesday or Thursday, but, just to get information from them, I mean, that's their business.
One of the things I liked that Bev's said is the use of partitions, because we could partition part of that space to do things like a Sunday school program. And I like that idea. I think we could do various things where we're not actually vastly altering that space, but using it well and using the same space in various ways. I also appreciate the fact that I know you guys did explore a lot of things. I wasn't on that committee and I do know you did. I've also given a lot of thought about what it feels like to go to another church. we have no control over this space. It's not us. People don't know how to find us. It's just, I think there's a lot of challenges for joining another church, just, and I've been a part of that with other congregations. So anyway, Annie, I appreciate your concerns, but I also feel like there's been a lot of work that I wasn't involved in that I trust. And also, I think Mosaic has some real possibilities for us that, so I am okay with us narrowing it towards there because I know a lot of things has been done that have gotten us to this point.
So I took a tour by myself. I just jumped in the car and drove over there, and I just couldn't stop smiling. There was a community there of Asian women that were just giggling and having a wonderful time. They must have been on lunch break. And I know we're trying to talk about church and where we're going to physically be, but we also have these wonderful possibilities of new connections. And I think that brings something really special.
You're just holding it, Amy, or do you want to say something? So these are difficult conversations, and we appreciate all the input. There are some of you sitting out there that are not as comfortable sharing your input in this little bit larger group. Not that we're a huge group today, but that's why we wanted to provide an opportunity for some small groups, some small group time. And there are also folks that are perhaps part of one of the working groups that really want to give some input or ask some questions to another working group and haven't had that opportunity. So we are going to take some time now to go into some small groups. There will be 6 of them. Those of you who are in Zoom, I will get on Zoom with you and listen and answer questions that I have answers to and take your input. The finances group, if you have more questions or input for that group, you're going to meet in the southeast corner. Thanks, Peter. The Caring for Communities group, the northeast corner.
That's right.
Having trouble with our directions here in the sanctuary. The Move Logistics in the southwest corner and the Real Estate Legal in the northwest corner. Look for the people who just gave you your reports. Those are the people who will be facilitating those groups. We're going to take notes and we'll ask for summaries of those notes. There will also be a group in the fellowship area for general questions or comments that maybe don't really fit into any of these 4 groups. We're going to have 2 rotations. We had planned them for about 15 minutes each. And so you can join a couple of different groups, and then we will come back together to hear summaries and any remaining questions and comments before we close the meeting. So I encourage you to get up and move to your first group, and we'll let you know when that 15 minutes is up. The Zoom group will have that whole 30 minutes.